right, hello everyone. Thanks for attending my talk. Richard was just joking with me because we had a conversation if anyone is even here at this time. As you see in the booth is already all gone. So I'm really happy that you stay here for me, for Maven 4. We do the Q&A with Slido as requested. This is the QR code for the room. I got it prepared that I see your answers on the app. Later, I think you have to choose the room. We are in Cinema Black Box. Who I am? I'm Matthias Bünger. I'm a Maven committer since a few months. In general, I'm a software engineer. And these are my Blue Sky and Mastodon social media context, where you can find me, where I'm active on. In theory, I'm also on LinkedIn, but don't expect me to get a quick response there. Before we start, the obligatory question, what Maven versions are you using, like in production? Anyone using 3.8? 2, 3, 4, several, okay. 3.9, great. Anything older, 3.6 or 5? 3.3? Maven 2? Yeah, you're laughing, but we have still several hundred or thousands downloads of Maven 2 every month, so. Okay, so looks great. Fast disclaimer on the front, everyone who's not at 3.9 or at least 3.8, you should consider updating. What we are talking about today. Motivation for Maven 4, why new Maven version if Maven 3 is working so fine that we are still using old versions. Then the changes I divided into two categories. The major changes, the breaking changes, or the major changes. And the minor changes I put under the topic of improved user experience, because I feel that many of them are improving the user experience more than minor changes of the program itself. And at the end, I give to you a slide about how to migrate project to Maven 4. Everything I give, every information I give in the talk are also available on the Maven site since a few weeks. I wrote 2 articles. They are linked in the presentation, which will be available after the talk. So you don't have to take any photos or everything. Just look at the Maven page later. So motivation. When we look at the current state of Maven, we have to consider Maven is over 20 years old, with the first version from 2004. Added not only a single program, but it consists of about 100 artifacts and repositories, only counting the official Maven plugins, Maven core, Maven components, not counting the, last time we checked, were about 6,000 community plugins and whatever else is on Maven Central, and not counting everything except there. And the last major version with Maven 3 is already 15 years old, so other software was not even invented there, or got several Maven major releases since that. So it also shows how stable Maven 3 is. And the last version, the minor version or last bug fix version, 3.9.9, is from last year. I can also say that there will be a 3.9.10 in the upcoming weeks, I guess. No final date yet, but we are close to this. Maven 3, or I should say Maven 2, introduced the POM XML we know as of today. Just to have a common understanding what is in there, we define our project informations, we define our plugin configurations for our build plugins, we define our dependencies and metadata like developers and whatever. And the whole POM XML as it is deployed to Maven Central, so other tools can pick it up, other consumers can pick it up, and that's the core of the Maven workflow and whatever. But having a POM like this and is steadily set in stone, but Maven wants to improve. 15 years without major improvements you can discuss this. There were many major improvements. Maven wants to be able to change the POM for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. Maven isn't available to change it at the moment. And Maven wants to update its internal core because there are many problems with especially with the plugin API, which in the past has no fixed boundaries, let's say it's this way. So many plugin developers using functions and variables that were designed for internal use for Maven itself, but are not behind a border or a boundary, but are exposed to the public. Similar to what the JDK was before Java 9, where Oracle decided with Project Jigsaw to introduce a module system and to hide the internal code into an API. And another problem with this plugin API is that many plugins out there, custom plugins, still use the Maven 2 API and Maven 2 functionality behind them without updating because they said, okay, it's still working, why should I upgrade my plugin? And of course, we are developers, Java is improving, Maven wants to make use of these improvements, like faster JDKs, faster builds, new language features like records or whatever. So, but as already said, Maven is more than Maven itself, more than a tool. Maven is a whole ecosystem. Maven consists, of course, of directly belongs to Maven as the Maven Central, where all the dependencies are stored. But other tools are depending on Maven, or literally say on the Maven POM. Other build tools like Gradle, Ivy, and whatever you name them are dependent on the POMs because they are the information for dependencies. The same goes with other tools like IDEs. IntelliJ is dependent on the POM if they want to support Maven projects. So if you just change the POM, you break all this. In the transition from Maven 1 to Maven 3, the former Maven Central was literally set up new setup. And if you now consider, okay, if you want to use Maven 4, use a new Maven Central, so literally deploy all your artifacts you want to use to the new Maven Central, nobody would ever use Maven 4 because all the whole ecosystem would break. Or in other words, like Hervé Boutimi, which is the chairman of the Maven PMC, wrote already 4 years ago, with the Maven build schema preserved in Ember, we can't evolve much. We'll stay forever with Maven 3 minor releases, unable to implement improvements that we imagine will require serious updating the POM schema. So this is the reason why we got several minor updates for Maven 3, and we're not able to change Maven 4. So the Maven team put a lot of effort to think about how can we get to the state we want? How can we set the base to improve? And literally, this is Maven 4. Maven 4 builds the bridge or clears the way to whatever comes in the future. It's not set, not clear what comes in the future, but to make Maven able to evolve. And this is where we come to what changes in Maven 4. Small disclaimer, we are still in release candidate phase. At the moment, release candidate 3. Release candidate 4 will also come in the next weeks, I guess. So features are set in stone. I don't expect any larger changes anymore, but disclaimer, they can change, but I don't guess they will. So literally the only real breaking change, Maven 4 will require Java 17 to run. Many people are still thinking you need the same JDK for running Maven as you want to compile your application against. But this is not true. You can run Maven on one JDK and compile to another Java version. So you need Java 17 to run Maven, but you can compile to Java 7, I guess, out of the box, because this is the latest, or the oldest Java version JDK 17 supports. If you need to support other JDKs for your application or older Java releases, There are also tools like the toolchain plugin you can use. So please don't mix it up and tell your colleagues who do. And with this, obviously, core updates come. I wrote the core got updated to Java 8 plus. Why? Because only in 2023, the decision was made to raise Maven to Java 8, and last year it was made to raise it to Java 17. And with this large code base, you obviously don't raise all your code and improve your codes on a second to the newest Java versions or features of it. And another maintenance thing, obviously, updating default Maven plugins, which are based from the super POM and dependencies and whatever. What code maintenance is. But also, I think you get it. The plugin API will be improved and will be changed heavily. So if you are using old plugins, I mean really old plugins, which are not maintained to the current Maven free APIs, they might break because the API changes, and even in Maven 3.9, which for me personally is some kind of preparing minor version for Maven 3, because several things that were considered under the umbrella of Maven 4 were already implemented in Maven 3.9 to get faster feedback, to get them out because they're working even with Maven 3, and to get the feedback, of course, and to prepare people or make people prepared to be able to migrate to Maven 4. One example of this, because it's somehow stupid that it still be used, is the Plexus dependency resolver. Got finally removed. It got deprecated in Maven 3.2, 2010, so 15 years ago. And there are many, many plugins out there still using it. So if you are using such a plugin, which will most probably be a custom plugin, it will break when you change to Maven 4. So what's also new? Maven 4 introduced a consumer POM. You might think, why consumer POM? Or what is it? At the moment, the current POM is a build POM. It is used for Maven to build your project. But it's also used from a consumer point of view because there are information about your dependencies. So now we officially divide between those POMs. And the new one is based on the model version 4.0, which you already know since Maven 2, while the build POM will can get increased to model version 4.1. The consumer POM is generated during the build and contains all the information you need as a consumer, but not the information you only need to build your project. To have it a little bit more visual, the build POM is the one you have in your repository. It might get upgraded to 4.1 if you want to. Then during the build, we generate an enriched POM with all information laid out, which you hide behind properties and variables, whatever. And finally, a consumer POM is generated at the end of the build or during the build. And this is a POM which will also get uploaded to Maven Central to be consumed by other tools and dependencies. If you compare these tools, as of now, we see that the build POM will have the model version 4.1, 0, and the consumer POM will stay on 4.0, so it can be consumed by all the tools and all the ecosystems. The dependency are obviously included in both. Now you're wondering, why is there an X for full parent and sub-project dependencies? Because you don't need them anymore in Maven 4 for your build, and you never needed them for when you consume a project. We'll come to this later. Then the build POM will obviously include your properties you define for your build and your build plugins. They are not needed in the consumer POM, but which is in both POMs are the repository informations, the profiles, and whatever. This might change in some, as you can thought about that some of the information might not be needed by the consumer, but that's the state of it is. And as of now, both get deployed to Maven Central. That might also change in the future, that the build POM might not get deployed. There are reasons to do this, but on the other side, there are reasons to not do it. And a small disclaimer here, this is obviously only for consumer POMs for clearly declared artifacts that should be consumed, and not for artifacts of type POM, which are artifacts to improve your build. Like if you create a meta POM or parent POM, company POM, whatever you call it, then the whole use of the artifact is to provide build information. So this won't change, or won't get erased, because otherwise the artifact would have no use. A small change, it's more a wording change, and the mindset change is that the Maven team decided to align the terms of Maven projects and Maven sub-projects, because they are independent Maven projects. So Maven modules are now called Maven sub-projects. To be honest, it's hard to get in mind. I also, I still say multi-module project, because multi-sub-project sounds weird. But we'll save time. If you want to use it, it's literally just a rename of the XML element. You have to update your POM version to 4.1.5, and there the old element is deprecated, but it's still available and usable. Similar to this, to the POMs, there are bill of materials. They are, if you declare a POM file as and want to use it as a bill of materials, in Maven 3 it has the type POM. In Maven 4 you can explicitly declare it as a type of BOM. And bill of materials, as I hope everybody knows, is a way to declare several plugin or dependency versions that belong together, and so you don't have to declare them in every project, and you can rely on the BOM that declares this version of this dependency belongs to this version. They work together and don't have to figure it out yourself. If you want to see an example of this, Karl-Heinz Matthias, also a PMC member, gave a talk at the IntelliJ IDE conference last year. I put a link to this, including a timestamp where it starts. You can have a small look at it if you want to. Then a topic that came up over years in Maven on the mailing list and discussions, Maven uses XML, can't we use another syntax, another file format for our build project definition? And yes, in Maven 4 you can. If you want, you can shoot yourself into the foot with YAML, with whatever you want. Maven 4 introduced a service provider interface to allow custom syntaxes. And two of the Maven PMC members, Tamas and Guillaume, I hope, I don't get the name, I never learned French, sorry, have already created an extension to support several other languages to be able to create your POM, YAML, JSON, TOML, JCON, which is working. So if you want to use it or want to create, I don't know, your POM XML in Kotlin or whatever, you can do it on your own risk. I personally like XML because one of the big advantages of it is you can validate it. And I personally don't believe that Maven Core would ever change this, but this is just a personal opinion. So if you want to use other syntaxes, you can. With this, I would say we have covered the major changes or breaking changes, and I would move to the minor changes or improved user experience, as I call them. First and most user experience improvement for me is that the reactor, so that the process who collects the information about your project and your sub-projects and saves you for that they are built in the correct order, gets heavily improved. And there was, if you ever experience a situation that you have a project with several sub-projects where let's call them A and B, where B is dependent of A, and A was built perfectly, successful, and in B there was an error, then Maven says to you, hey, there was an error in project B, fix it, and then call this command, and the build will resume at the point where it failed, and then the build fails again because the reactor doesn't know, oh, I need module A. Right. This got fixed. It was a 15-year-old bug, finally got fixed. But also other improvements were made on the process. This is now more aware of builds that are where the project are in multiple levels and not in the flat standard way subfolders built, and in the way that you have a root for your parent and then one folder for all your subproject. You can now combine them more, and it would work better. I guess there are still some edge cases where the reactor just gets to its edge, but well, if you have such or if you experience such things, please reach out to the mailing list. Matt Mulder, another PMC, wrote already almost 5 years ago about this in his blog. You can check this. The thing with the bug comes with another improvement, that we now have a project local repository. So the artifacts that are built during your build are now stored in a project local repository, not in the user repository in your home directory. And that saves you from polluting your user repository with half-baked subproject or artifacts. So you have less side effects on other projects you build, especially when you have a failed build. So in general, please don't use Maven clean install. And thanks, Andre, for this beautiful image, or your full repository of this. So in general, please don't use Maven clean install. But also thanks again for this image. Choose wisely. Maven verify is enough in, I would say, 99% of your builds. But there are cases where you want to use install. So you want to make use of install, for example, when you have a library, you want to install it in your local user repository to use this library in another build in another project you're working on. What you most of the time never want to use, never say never, but never, is use clean every time. Because when you use clean, you throw away everything you have built before. So there is nothing Maven can cache, or Maven cache extension can cache, because when there's nothing, you can not reuse anything. Yes, I know there are many old tutorials on the internet who say just make always Maven clean install and you don't have problems. But this were workarounds for problems from years ago. So please always choose wisely what you want to do. In general, Maven verify is enough. Tamas, the PMC member, wrote a nice article about repository handling, quite technical, under the topic of never say never, because of this. So if you want to get a deeper information or look at how repositories are handled by Maven, check this out. It's very interesting. And another improvement is we now have official properties to define the root of our Maven build. This is of our Maven project. This comes really handy when you want to configure plugins to use specific files in your folder, because in the past Maven has to literally guess which is the root directory of your project. You can now do this with two ways. You can either have a .maven folder in the folder you want to consider your root. you can always do this in Maven 3 because the Maven folder you can use for Maven config and other files. Or with Maven 4 and Maven version, model version 4.1, you can use the root attribute in the POM file of your root parent or whatever you want to, and then this POM, or this directory where the POM lies in is declared as your project root directory. We have 3 official properties for this: the root directory on project top, so before the build start or at the first of the build, and then 2 session binds, also the root directory and the top directory, where the top directory is the goes out from the directory where you call the Maven, or when you call Maven with a file argument, then the folder the file argument shows to. And because Maven doesn't know if you have a .maven folder or you have or can't ensure that you created a Maven folder and or set the root attribute, the root directory variables are not, or properties are not filled with a value. While on the other side, if you call your Maven, Maven always has a starting point, and so the top directory variable will always have a value. The sign on the right side, when these properties were introduced, several other properties which either cover the same thing but were never proposed to be officially used are either removed, deprecated, or renamed. So if you rely on something like session, multi-module, something variables properties, they most probably will be gone with Maven 4. So please stick to those, and then you shouldn't have any problems. Speaking of project or sub-project improvements here, they will now have consistent timestamps. Yes, small but nice, especially because the default values for deploy at the end and install at the end were changed to true. That means only if your full project was built successfully, then the project, the sub-project and all the POM artifacts that were created are then installed or deployed to your local or remote repository. So you don't end up anymore in this situation, at least not by default. Their sub-project A was built successfully and deployed to Maven Central, but sub-project B failed, and wow. And one of my personal highlights, that's why there's the lovely emotion, is automatic versioning, and that's, we come back to the thing I said before when you really looked at the content of the POM files, that you don't have to manually set the versions of your parent project or of project-owned dependencies. What does it look like? Can you all read it on the back? I think this is a Maven POM we all know. We have here a parent declaration with the version, which must be hard-coded in the parent definition, and when you have a dependency to another project, we have to declare either the version hard-coded or use the project version. I'm not counting the CI-friendly variables here because they mix it up a little bit. With Maven 4, this changes a little bit. As you can see, it's much smaller. You don't have to set up the properties for, or the values for version anymore, because Maven can handle it himself. And this comes to build improvements and to CI-friendly variables. They were introduced in Maven 3.5 as a first try. And you can use revision SHA-1 and I forgot the third, instead of your project version for your parent and your dependencies, your parent, and fill the value for the revision property, either declare it as a normal property in your POM or pass it from the outside like your CI build. This worked perfectly fine with project that had only one module. only one project, but when you have sub-project, you can only use this in combination with the Maven Flatten plugin. With Maven 4, this is not the Flatten plugin is not used, not needed anymore, because as we have seen before, Maven 4 can handle the versions of your project on itself. And another thing for build improvements, if you are caring about your builds, you can now use a fail on severity parameter to break your build when there are warnings, info, or whatever texts, and not only error messages. This can be quite useful if you want to migrate to a newer version of a plugin or of a build, because depending on how large your project is and how many text messages are printed out during the build, you might oversee such warnings, and with this parameter, you can just fail your build. Yeah, so this improves project maintenance and makes it easier to find things that might break in the future, or misconfigurations or whatever. Now we are at the build. Build is made of life cycles, and the default, or the way the life cycle of Maven is implemented was changed. In Maven 3, it's literally a list of phases that are sticked in a fixed order. But now the internal representation is a tree of phases, which allows the execution of phases without the execution of other phases. But obviously, there are some phases that are required, other ones. Like, you can deploy, but maybe not install, but you can only compile after sources phase, because otherwise, what should be compiled? There's not yet any further use of this, and the Maven default lifecycle stays the same, so there's nothing changes for you as a regular user. I'm very excited to see what this allows us to do in the future. Especially the way to deploy without an install, I think, can be quite handy. Another changes that are more interested for us on a daily usage basis are that now every phase you defined by Maven has a clear before and after phase. In the past with Maven 3, there were some pre and post phases, but not for all lifecycle phases, which brought us in the situation if you want to, I don't know, do something after a certain phase, which has not a post phase, you literally try to do it somehow between or before the next phase. This is all gone, all the pre-post phases are gone, and every lifecycle phase now has a clear before and after. And in addition to this, on project level, we also get an all and each, including before and after all, including before and after each phase. So you can do something with a plugin, or you can write a plugin which kicks in, for example, after all projects and sub-projects were built, or after each or before each, if you want to do something like, I don't know, print hello for every sub-project, or do more useful stuff. Maybe a note for this, the naming here we're choosing and the way the things work is literally the same like you know them from test frameworks like JUnit. So you know the concept of before each or after all there. It's literally the same here. Everyone, I guess, knows what profiles allows you to do. You can define project profiles like run my integration tests, which you only want to do on special purposes. But in Maven 3, when you run a profile which doesn't exist, the build fails. That doesn't change in Maven 4, but Maven 4 introduced the concept of optional profiles that don't fail the build, just that it prints two warnings at the start and the end, that the profile doesn't exist. Don't ask me why at the start and the end, I have not figured it out yet. I think just for visibility. And And how do you use that? Literally the same way as before, the -p argument for activating profiles. But instead of a white space or no space between the name of the profile, you just put a question mark there, and then Maven 4 recognizes, oh, this is an optional one. If it doesn't exist, don't break the bit. So, as a recap, Maven 4 requires Java 17 for your build, not for your application to compile, but for your build. And with the release of the JDK or the Java version, many improvements in the code and the API come with. It introduced the consumer POM, and so we have a separation of build and consumer POM now. We have a lot of user experience improvements, as I call them, or minor improvements, like the reactor improvements, new lifecycle phases, automatic versioning, official properties for project root, and many, many more. I wrote on a long article for the Maven site, which covers all the new things. This is a link. It's also linked from the landing page of the Maven site. And so I don't show you the link anymore. What do you want to, or do you have to do when you want to migrate to Maven 4 or prepare for Maven 4? The first thing, you should make sure that your build runs successfully or is built successfully with Maven 3.9 and up-to-date 3x plugins. There are some plugins of the Maven core plugins where also already version 4.x versions are available in alpha or beta state, most probably. Don't use those versions yet, or only with the Maven 4 release candidate. So make sure that your project builds with 3.9, that you are there up to date. Then you should have no problems when you just switch to Maven 4 under the hood. What you have to do is prepare your build environment, locally, your CI server, whatever, that is available or capable to run Java 17. And when you want to migrate, make sure to do this, then change Maven 4, maybe update the plugins where a Maven 4 version is available. You might have to fix errors. I can't tell you anymore because this is project dependent. If you use such strange things or custom plugins, there might be errors you have to fix or the plugin maintainers have to fix. And as the last step, an optional one, you can use the Maven 4 features which required increasing the POM version. Also on the Maven side, I wrote an article about literally this and with more details and code examples. So a migration guide for users is available. I will update the guide with all the experience and feedback you gave us as on the mailing list or on social media. So other projects can also make use of problems or things you have experienced while you are updating. So update to last Maven version, prepare your build environment, test out the release candidate if you want, give us feedback about updating and trying out on the mailing list, on the website, social media, whatever. So I through my slides, and we have a few more minutes to answer questions if there are some. Oh, there are many more. What do you think about Maven Daemon? I just read them from like the votes. Maven Daemon is great. It really improves your build experience and your build speed. So if you are able to use it, you can and should do it. It's since Andres helped me 2 years, 3 years under the Maven umbrella. Yeah, something like that, right? So it's more or less not a side project from any individuals, but from the Maven team. So I think you're safe there. There was, I think, one hand rising with a question somewhere in the center, or over there. So the question is about the resolver ether version. Did I understand it correctly? Okay, so. Okay, the module system. Okay, now. Yeah, okay. To be honest, I can't say very much to the module, to the support of the Java platform module system. I know that there are heavy improvements in the working. Martin, another French long surname, I neither can't remember nor speak, put a current state of this on the mailing list about 3 weeks ago. Was a really long mail with the current stand of this. With all the information, because he's working on the support of the module platform for Simpson. I can't really tell you more about this. I would like that you check this, the entry on the mailing list. And if you have specific questions or feature requests about this, also contact us on the mailing list so we can consider or check our Jira and GitHub issues if there's already an issue listed, so it gets considered into the support for the platform system. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so support for native libraries also. I'm absolutely not into this topic, so I'm sorry that I can't tell you any more about this. But I even can't remember any entries on the mailing lists about this, so please raise it. And I think the Maven core maintainers should be able to give you proper answers. I can't. Okay, I will follow here, the list here. Will Maven 4 remove the warnings for not defining core plugin versions when using the Maven wrapper? I'm not sure. Maven 4 will turn on even more warnings when your plugins are not properly configured or even fail the build. That's why I said that you should make sure that your build runs properly on Maven 3.9 and most probably without warnings. I got 1 more minute, right? Okay, so can Maven use a build cache like Gradle? Yes, there's a Maven build cache extension. Check it out, it's really great. I got this. Do you have an overview of how many of the community plugins are Maven 4 ready now? No, because I also don't know how many Maven plugins are maintained anyway at the moment. We only knew that there are many old ones which are still downloaded, so we guess that they are still in use. Doesn't consumer POM breaks SBOMs? I don't think so, at least not in my project. I have migrated to Maven 4. Are you already planning Maven 5? Nope. Where will the slides be? somewhere on the JCON site, I think I can upload them. Other sites, I will upload them, or I will of course upload them on SpeakerStack, and there you can search for my name, and I will post the link on my social media. And I think when will Maven 4 will be released? I don't know, but I'm very sure that it will be this year. So, and now time is over. I have to skip the last 2 questions, sorry, but you can come out after me. Thank you.